This next segment is brought to you by NEC and Franklin Designs. Those of you that were at our summit last year, Jeff Kaplan from NEC did a fantastic job navigating late in the afternoon on the second day. Everybody was tired. We didn't put him as late as we did that day, or actually it might be close. But he brought the crowd to life. And this year, I don't think he let us down at all, because he got a great set of experts in the industry to join him on this for this next hour and 15 minutes ish. We'll see how it goes. Do you see Jeff yet?
He's up. We gotta put him on the screen.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Boom. There he is. Jeff, how you doing?
Unmute.
Unmute yourselves, guys.
Everybody
All you unmute yourselves.
It's,
Jeff, how are you?
Oh, now I'm learning how to use this. I'm doing great.
Yeah, like, you've never used Zoom before?
You've never used Zoom before?
First time this
Yeah.
year, huh?
You know what? We do Teams. Sorry,
Yeah. fair enough.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Phrase of the year, unmute yourself.
Yeah. We're having shirts made for next year. Unmute yourself. I'm going to hand it over to you, Jeff, real quick, to let you introduce everybody. Since it's your show, I'll remind you guys to try to stay unmuted. And we're going to ask for questions from the audience, Jeff. We're going to be here. We're going to go off our video so we don't take up space on the screen, so they can see more of you guys. If you need anything, just ask. We're going to be listening. If any questions from the audience come in, one of us will come back on and you'll see our video. We'll be doing this number or something to make sure you notice us. You can also, if you have the ability to pay attention, I should say, to the Q&A window, Jeff, on your screen, you might see some Q&A stuff come through there. It's at the bottom. It's a Q&A button. Panelists can see the questions as they get asked. I don't want you to get too distracted by that, though, because we're monitoring it, and we'll come in and interrupt toward the end of your session if we need to. Even if we don't have questions, we do come back in, it's because you guys have taken up so much of this time. We have to move on to the next glorious topic. That's all I got. You got anything?
Audience, keep the questions coming.
Oh yeah, and thanks for donating to Variety. The money is awesome to see. In spite of everything going on in our world, the fact that people are donating money all day long that we're going to pass over to Variety has been great. Amy says almost $2,500.
And let's see
so
how
far.
much Jeff can get it even further.
Yeah, and it's all up to you, Jeff, to push us over the $3,000 mark this hour. And
Jerry Lewis.
And you do have your prize giveaway that we'll do at the end, Jeff. All right.
I was thinking that my name should be Jerry Lewis. Little marathon there.
You need the sucker.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right. We'll see you guys in a little bit. Good luck.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody that's been working hard all day getting this together. It's been a great show, and we're very excited to be a part of it. Last year, it was very easy to get the audience interactive because I could see the audience. I was right there. This year, I'm looking at a camera, and I'm hoping you're all seeing me okay. One of the things I want to make sure we do with this spot, it's not just this is the panel, we're going to give our opinions and then go on from question to question. We truly want the audience to participate. If you have a question, please say it. But if you have an opinion, we want the opinion. We want the audience to teach us things as well. With that said, we have a limited time. I want to introduce this world-class panel that has agreed to participate. I'm very excited. We have some people back and we have some new people. What I'd like to do is take a few minutes, let each one introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about them so you understand. While you know, I mean, you've seen Matthew Baser already all day today. The rest of us are brand new, and we want you to know who we are. I have a very diverse group here. I've got someone from Marcus Theater, and Rob will introduce himself in a minute. You all know they have 1,000 plus screens. I have Matthew Baser from a very niche, theater dine-in. I have Sandy Karp, or we have Sandy Karp, who is also from another niche dine-in theater. And then we also have Siobhan, who is here from Pepsi, to give us a different perspective other than a theater manager owner type perspective. So with that, in my squares, I feel like it's the Brady Bunch. Let's go with Siobhan. Siobhan, you're from Pepsi. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Siobhan Scalamonia. I'm the director of sales with PepsiCo. So I represent both our beverage and foods portfolio, and I support our theater and our gaming business. So first time attending and being part of the Dine-In Summit. So thank you for having me and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
Rob Novak is the next square two over.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. For those that don't know me, my name is Rob. I work at Marcus Theaters. I'm the Vice President of Food and Beverage and Concessions at Marcus Theaters, which means I oversee all of the product that is consumed by our customers inside of our buildings. And I also oversee all of the operations at our 23 movie taverns. So all of the movie tavern operations, soup to nuts from the beginning to end, I deal with, and then all of the food and beverage and concessions for our legacy theaters, I also oversee.
Good. And David, it's a niche, not a niche. I apologize. Just clarifying. Matthew, you're with Flix and you run that company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
They already know who I am. Come on. No, I already got somebody complaining that I don't smile enough on camera. So there you go. I'm Matthew Baser. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Flix Brewhouse. We have 10 locations with one under construction, partially completed, operating over 7 states, and every single one is a full service dine-in screen.
Awesome. Sandy, why don't you share who you are with IPIC?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Karp. I'm the VP of Construction and Development. We also have about 14 theaters. Every single one has some sort of dine-in. Some of them have actual restaurants where you walk through the lobby and you go into the restaurant and then you go to the theater. We just opened in Atlanta and during a pandemic, so that's been interesting. And we are under construction right now with our new concept, a new Italian eatery that's going in the Atlanta market as well.
Wonderful. And thank you for joining us for the first time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm with Sharp NEC Display. I sell projectors and displays to theaters. I've been in cinema since I was a senior in high school as an usher at AMC Theaters in Philadelphia back in a long time ago. So with that said, I'd like to get started. The key for this panel is to talk about demographics versus your model. So in other words, you've all looked at demographics. Nobody would open a theater without understanding the market they're about to open. You each have your model, whether you're an actual dine-in or wanting to get into dine-in, whether you sell hot dogs or filet mignon, whether you have a bowling alley or Chuck E. Cheese type activities for children. You look at the demographics and you build your theater in an area that can meet what your needs are. What we want to talk about now is in post-COVID, where in the past you might have looked at the demographics and said, well, point A is a little good, point B is not so good, but yet my model can fit and I can live with some of those things. In a post-COVID model, you may not have that luxury. For example, the first question I'm going to ask the panel, and then we'll open it up to everybody. If an unexpected location comes your way, whether it's a landlord, developer, looking for an experienced exhibitor to take over an empty space, or you stumble upon something that was never there before, are you going to keep your model exactly as it is, even if the demographics don't completely agree with that? Or will you change your model to meet the demographics within your theater? And how important is that? So let's see, let's start with Matthew. Let's go that way.
Okay. Well, with the exception of Sandy, I think we're all changing our model. In other words, you can't necessarily see. iPick is. I'll let her speak for herself, but iPick has the pods and these kind of things that are built for COVID, and that's kind of where they live to begin with, is in that niche. I think you told me I need to pronounce it. But we don't, right? We're more of everyday value price dine-in cinema entertainment. And there's going to be a model that has to change. Forget will you or won't you, right? I don't even think that's the question. I think it's will you in order to survive. There's not a lot of room for everyday value priced dining to move the needle. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's go to restaurants for a minute, because I think it's a really good comparative analysis. Let's take the typical casual chain dining, right? The Chili's, the Applebee's, the Fridays of the world, okay? They all are out there, they're on every corner, and they all serve the same thing. They all compete against each other, related to price to move the concept. If you go step up a notch and go to polished casual dining, you see them surviving and doing better because there's more price elasticity related to that customer. And then go to the highest level customer, right? Go to your steakhouse, go to your high-end steakhouse. That's your iPick in the dining industry. And they've got a specific customer that they're catering to that can afford that is specifically going to go to them because that's how they go to a movie, period, end of story. I think for us, for the casual player, in order to be able to survive, innovation. You're going to hear me preach on this. And I can tell you, I had a really interesting experience in Atlanta, Georgia, just the other day. I went to Taffer's Tavern in Alpharetta. And that restaurant is an entirely sous vide kitchen. So if you look inside the kitchen, you'll see no cook's line. You'll see a cook's line, sorry. You'll see no hood, because they have all cooking equipment that doesn't require a hood. They use air fryers, they use high-speed ovens, and they sous vide everything. So it all comes out perfect, consistent, much less labor, and quickly. That's the kind of innovation that we're going to need in order to be able to survive. $15 an hour minimum wage is headed our way, whether we like it or not. It may or may not be with a tip credit. We have no idea. So what are we going to do to compete? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to self-service beer, self-service wine, self-service cocktails, right? Because self-pour, that technology is out there all over the place. I'm going to move to a menu that requires significantly less labor in the kitchen, and I'm going to deliver it by robots to auditoriums, because we can't afford the labor. So the model is going to have to move. So where demographically would that work? I think it will work a lot of places, but it's going to take a place that can afford it, because the era of the $20 hamburger is about to be here.
That's wonderful, Matt. I appreciate that perspective. Sandy, as Matthew referenced iPick, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I mean, when COVID hit, we were really ahead of the game. We've always been trying to innovate and bring different venues of entertainment into our auditoriums. Our seating capacity, we're a boutique luxury theater, so we don't have the occupancy that Marcus Theaters has or the Flicks Brewhouse has. So for us, the demographic has to work for us, right? Because we don't have the occupancy. Our seating layout is so much less than everybody else. It has to make sense for us. But we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have to pivot, and we have to be flexible, and we have to entertain other things, which we are also doing right now. We're looking at different events. A few years ago, we were doing live events in our theaters, and we were bringing stages in and everything that, we just watched a video on, and there were big learning curves from that. So would we change our model? We're always expanding and being innovative with our model, but our basic model of how we serve, how we do our seating layout, I don't foresee that changing right now. I think it works. I think we're ahead of it. And you know, and we're seeing it with, you know, not that anybody's making money right now, but we're definitely seeing it with, you know, the sales that we're having with people coming, wanting to come back to the theater. So, you know, with the limited sites that we do have open, people still want to come back to the theater. Can't hear you.
So you were saying, that's that little mute button. I'm learning.
Yeah.
So you were saying that your model is a strong model, that you're going to look at your demographics, and for the most part, while you are absolutely making changes to the environment, your core model will remain the same, and you'll find a location that fits.
Yes.
And Matthew, you were saying that for your model, you will have to make changes based on the locations you find.
Yeah, and the ability, and that will be the very ability to survive will be necessitated.
Absolutely. Let's go to Rob, since Sandy mentioned Marcus, and then we'll go to Siobhan after Rob.
Okay, so you ask an interesting question, Jeff, because we have the ability to go with two different models. We can go with a movie tavern, or we can go with, you know, a dine-in concept. We can go to a Marcus Theater traditional building. In the past few years, I think the two models have continued to morph, say merge into one. That would be unfair, because obviously we still operate movie tavern as a dine-in concept. But when we opened up our last movie tavern prior to the pandemic hitting, back in, what was that, October of 2019, which feels like an eternity ago, we already approached it differently. We took servers out of that model and wanted to move to app ordering with delivery to seat. And as Matthew talks about, this labor issue is going to be an 800-pound gorilla on this business. This business has not necessarily always caught up with inflation, and we have a lot of costs, capital costs, and, you know, labor costs, and we have studio costs, and all these things add up. So we've determined that one of the big things going into this is, how do we minimize labor? How do we keep guest satisfaction up? You know, what is it that guests like? Well, guests like food delivered to their auditorium. Do they love servers? If they can order via phone and the app or something else, that acts as a good thing to supplant that. And we found that. And we were in the process of trying to move to that back at fall of 2019. Then all of this hit. And then we were forced, as we reopened. As we reopened almost all of our dine-in sites, we have not reopened with servers. We pushed them all to app. Because of capacity limits that have existed in the municipalities, it's kind of worked in our favor. So, you know, does that vary by demographics? Yes. Do we still have an operation in the East Coast right now in Philadelphia that's operating with servers? Yes. You know, am I saying this is the long-term solution? I don't know. But I'm saying we have to analyze this. And I think when you get into demographics, and if things come our way or something were to, what do you open next? The world we closed and the world we open are two different worlds. And they're never going to go back. And that's the struggle I have with a lot of people. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, once we get back. Well, right, we will get back. But what we get back will never be what we left. You can't shut an industry down for as long as we have and think that it's just going to go back to normal. You know, as Matthew was talking about, the menu needs to change. We already trimmed down, and we knew that going in. And I mean, you know, we've talked about this at previous summits we've been at. Some people a little bit more ambitious about the menu. Some of us, as we've grown in size and scale, we had to be more realistic about it. You know, just because a customer wants something doesn't mean they need something, because it might not be good for the business. And I think that's what we've learned in this whole thing, because the question we have as to how we operate and how we go at it in a business is, what do we look like coming out of it for all of us? You know, when you build models to say a business does a theater does 1 million people a year, does 400,000 people a year, does a little shy of 400,000. Well, that was in a pre-pandemic world with different release schedules, with different windows and all these things. Does that exist in the fall of 2021 or spring of 22? We don't know, because that's when we start talking about what normality is, you know, that far out. So that's the one risk, and that's probably not the most direct answer to it. I would say everything changes. And I think we all need to be a little bit more conservative and diligent in when we open up locations I think we went through a period of time in the past 5 to 7 years, where especially we know this from dine-in, people would drop in to say, oh, we can get a little bit of this market here. It's a robust market. Well, that market might not be as big as it once was. So that sliver that you're getting isn't as big as it once was either. And I think, when you look at it, we were over-screened as a nation, and we had too many, niche players coming into this, and that demand is not going to be there when we reopen, whether we like it or not, because you can't shut something down for as long as we were shut down and not have some attrition. And that's what's going to hurt people.
Yeah, and can I interject real quick? So in Atlanta, we did exactly what you did, what you're saying, Rob. We minimized our menu. We revamped the menu completely. We implemented a new handheld system as opposed to having the servers go. And it's, for us, we're still going to serve, but like you're right, we're trying to get people to get to the app and order that. So that's all our test trial we're rolling out in February. So those are operational things that we definitely need to address. When I say we're not going to change our model, because I'm construction and design, I'm talking about the construction and the design of it. Like our layout works right now. We have a certain number that we need to hit, but operationally, we need to make a lot of changes because both Matt and Rob talked about it. The labor costs are going to be huge.
And we're doing this, Jeff, too. We're doing this at a baseline movie theater. If you are just a straight movie theater with no food and just straight concessions, we want you to order via the app. We don't want to have concession attendants. The only thing we're not doing, where Matthew's talking about with the bartending, with the alcohol rules and stuff in certain states we operate with, that's the kind of the last safeguard of humanity, where we're holding on to an actual physical person still in that regard. And that person also serves as the order taker for those that might fight the wave to move to technology. And the one point I'd make to this, Jeff, is for this group and this industry to learn from, we get a downstream benefit from the pandemic. Every other industry that's much bigger than ours, remember, we're a real small industry in the scope of the economy, but like the restaurant industry, watch how they behaved, and they forced everybody and trained humans to use apps and trained Americans if you want to order. So we benefit from what McDonald's did, Chipotle did, Starbucks did. We're just getting in line saying, now you need our app to order. We're not trying to ask people to reinvent the wheel, because for the past 12 months, they've been forced to do this. And that's why I key on it. I know people don't love it, but they're the largest restaurant operator in the world. Watch what McDonald's did ahead of the pandemic. You had to use the app. They didn't really advertise it. Then you went to their kiosks. They stuck them in front of your face, and then they cut the POS down to 1. And that's what so it becomes a burden to get to speak to a human. They didn't advertise it. They didn't jam it in your face and say you have to do it, but they forced you to do it. And that's how we see our transition happening.
So one of the key things you're saying, out of the many things, is we're learning from the pandemic that
absolutely
applications and opportunities that we've been talking about for years were forced upon us now, and it'll help us be better when it's over.
And learn from what other businesses are forcing society to do. Don't try to fight the rising tide. We're not a big enough industry to change consumer behavior. We need to adapt and get on board with that consumer behavior and figure out how we can make it work for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it just advanced everything for us, right? Because
accelerated it.
Years are we sitting in executive meetings talking about using the app and getting the app running? I mean, I know we were for years, and like the pandemic hit, and like boom, we have to get it going. It just forced everybody to go the direction we were going to go anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Matthew, you're not smiling.
I am now.
Siobhan, you've now heard from 3 exhibitors, but you, in your position, you work with multiple exhibitors throughout the country. What would you want to add to this to answer that question?
Well, I'm furiously taking notes, right? Because we're constantly trying to meet our partners where they are, right? So it's our responsibility, to make sure we have the right products when all of these changes happen. So as menus are changing, we want to make sure we have the right products, because candidly, if I don't have the right product for your new menu, somebody else will. and we've now lost, that line of business or that particular option. So, because everything is going to app based, we are making, from an equipment standpoint, we're doing as much as we can around touchless, right? Because I think some of it is a technology piece, the movement to app, and the other is coming out of COVID, a contact piece, right? So we're trying to be sensitive to that. A lot of our equipment previously was very, now when you think about how many people were touching those pieces of equipment during it, during any given day or a Friday night rush at a theater, like any of us that are now, we're all super clean freaks now. I cringe thinking about it. And I think, to Rob's point, we're not going back to where we were in February, March of last year. Nobody's going to be comfortable for a really long time to have those kind of touch points. So when you do change your layout or how you go to market, how do we make sure we have the right equipment and the right products to get there? So a lot of that from the equipment side is touchless, and then a lot of it is making sure we have the right package sizes. So I'll share, and this is something we're going through right now with we're seeing it with arenas and stadiums. But most of those places, because of cost, were using a bulk nacho chip. So we represent Tostitos. They were using a bulk nacho chip, right? So you'd go and you'd have a bulk nacho. Well, what the feedback we're getting is, hey guys, when, hopefully when stadiums have fans again in the fall, kind of taking football for an example, we can't do that, right? Whether it's a labor thing to have a whole bunch of people filling those trays, if it's a guest perception that they don't want people touching, everybody's a little bit more comfortable with the manufacturer bagged. Well, we don't have the right size to play in that space. So, and that's not something we can turn overnight. So now it's about creating, and just to pick on Tostitos for a minute, but like creating the right size package that's going to work for, all of the stadiums, or as many of the stadiums across the country as we can, that might work in theater, that might work in retail and other outlets. Because like basically the consumer feedback we're getting is like, people don't want that bulk look anymore. So a lot of what we're focused on is, I'm constantly gathering, I feel like I'm the conduit to gather the information from our partners of how, I'll use the catchword of the day, to how they're pivoting to make sure that we're kind of parallel to them on that pivot. So whenever the new plan comes or the new menu comes or the new layout comes, I'm, coming with my bag of tricks and saying, I have everything to meet you where you've now landed.
So you're saying we're all going to become Jack Nicholas in As Good as It Gets.
Way to tie the movie bow on it. Yeah.
There you go. What I really like, Siobhan and Rob and everybody, you're bringing up a very key and interesting point. It's not just what you have to do with your own individual theater. It's what other people are doing in other industries that we should look at. In other words, you're a dine-in. We talked last year about who is your competition. Is it the theater down the street, or is it the restaurant down the street? And it's both. So why not look at everybody around you and see what they're doing? What are other restaurants doing? What are stadiums doing? What are people who attract people to support their business doing to drive their business in a post-COVID environment? We have an audience participant, which we had no idea was around, and that would be Russell Van Orsdale. Russell, are you available to, or can we find Russell? Oh, there you are.
Can you see me? Can you see and hear me?
Okay.
Random
audience.
He's raining on my parade. He loves to do this to me. What's up?
Well, listen, I see a couple of these comments, and I want to echo, what Bama has to say, and also what's coming up in this. And I guess here's the conundrum, right? So Jeff, you're talking, would we take on an opportunity and change our model? Well, yes. We would. We'd be silly not to. However, what Fridley Theaters, to use a Matthew Beza word, however, Fridley Theaters has been successful for the better part of 80 years because we provide an excellent level of customer service. And that's going to be the conundrum as we get to a $15 minimum wage, if and when that comes, or how that comes. But I'm not looking at trying to figure out a way to automate all this stuff. I still want to be able to provide that to our guests in every way, shape, or form. And I think Craig said this, and I would love to hear Bama jump in if he's even available. But you know, that interaction with our guest, whether it's them asking us what we, you know, when we're wanting to sell specials, right? Or we're wanting to do things, you know, those servers have an amazing responsibility. And I just don't see us going that way. So listen, we have to change. I guess getting back to your normal question, right? We would love to take on some opportunities that would maybe potentially come our way. And you have to continue to change your model to fit that demographic in some capacity. But to me, customer service stays. And so I guess I'm kind of mixing those things together. Is ultimately, yes, I would change. However, no, I wouldn't to a certain extent. There are some things that I won't compromise. So, oh, I see Craig's on. Oh, he's going to go for it, Bama.
Oh, I can't wait.
Now, I mean, there's no doubt everybody's got to adapt in some way or another. We just chose to do it 3 years ago. We saw this trend coming that with the mobile devices that people are using now, and they run their lives basically off of mobile devices. And we wanted to keep that same experience from when they walked into the door. Why make them put that? Well, and we do make them put it away to a certain extent because we provide the iPad at the seat. That way we know we can control the experience instead of trying to support multiple platforms or multiple devices. We know we've got that one device that we have locked down and we actually control it all the time. But like Russell said, the most important thing we can do is give customers good customer service. And we do it because we still have a ticket counter person. We have our bartender in the bar. We still have ushers. We still take our runners before the show starts. Everybody gets a ticket, gets shown to their seat where they're supposed to sit. Ask them if they need any assistance with the iPad, ordering. If they don't want to order off it, they want to order by paper, they can, but everybody uses the iPad. If they got any questions about it, they've never been here, we'll explain the process to them. But they love the fact that once we walk away from them and they sit down, they are in control of their experience. They get to order when they want to order. They get to pay when they want to pay. They can order as many times as they want. And they don't have the distraction of somebody coming and asking them, would you like something else? Do you want, are you ready to pay? We do it a little bit, we do it like Russell. We enter from the rear of the theater. We want them to keep that visual contact out of that customer's eye because they bought a movie theater ticket and they're coming to eat. I'm like Russell, the main thing we need to do is give them the best possible movie experience they can, and then great food to go along with it. And so we always make sure that's our number one goal is the movie experience, but feel like we can also give them a great meal at the same time. In the technology, our background is not is technology. We weren't in this business in 2017. We got in it. We decided to try it for the hell of it, and we actually enjoy it. But it's been a challenge. We made a point to make sure that we didn't do it the way anybody else did it. We didn't take a bunch of restaurant guys and sit down and say, okay, tell us how to run a restaurant. We didn't ask a bunch of theater guys. We spent 18 months. We went around the country. A lot of your places, we went inside and looked at y'all's best practices we could pick up on and where we thought we could improve from. But we got to give the customer a good service. They'll come back. Jeff, you were talking about demographics earlier. My demographic is a higher end demographic, not to ultra wealthy or nothing like that, but my customers have come to, they want to know they can get good food, watch a good movie in a clean environment. Kids aren't running all over the place. So I'm fortunate that if they'll release me and give me more capacity, my customers have already come back. They call me, I get, I've got probably 80% of my ticket customers right now are steady customers. They're coming every time I get a new movie. They just want more content to see because we give them that type of environment when they come, whether they like the movie or not. When they leave, they felt like they got the value for their dollar.
So Alabama and Russell, to a point, you're saying that customer service is your model, and you will deliver to your customers a high value customer service. So it doesn't matter if you get a location opens up, a mall operator lost the theater and they want to come to you to operate it. Your model will fit regardless of the demographics because your key model is customer service and giving options.
To a certain extent. I mean, you got to make sure you got enough rooftops in your area to be able to support your business. You got to, because frankly, everybody, it's becoming a more and more convenient world. Nobody drives more than 5 miles to pretty much do anything anymore. So if you don't have enough rooftops within 5 miles of you, you're not going to have enough business. People just don't drive across town anymore because they don't need to. They can find some other avenue for their entertainment dollar within their realm in which they can stay in. So so like Matthew said, he's right. You do have to adapt when you go to some of these areas. And now I wouldn't change my operational model. I may have to change a little bit about what my pricing model may have to be to meet that demographic. But no, I wouldn't change the way I do business.
Yeah, but the difference is that you're already there, right? Having eliminated service to begin with, and at least the greed in that interaction with the server, that interaction with an iPad, and you were ahead of all of us in that regard.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Yeah, I went ahead and bit the bullet early and made that capital expenditure to be able to do it. That's correct.
That's right. And by the way, didn't I tell you that every time you speak, you're supposed to finish with War Eagle?
War Eagle.
There you go.
And Jeff, I think it's important to add, I don't think technology means you're not into customer service. I think, Marcus Theaters and Movie Tavern, we find customer service to be essential to who we are. Taking care of our guests. If we don't have guests, we don't have a business. I think it'd be a misnomer to say because we ask people, or just what Craig's doing, forcing people to adapt and go to different technology doesn't take away customer service. Because Craig brings up some good points. At the root of what he's doing is if the consumer does not feel they're getting a great experience, and a lot of that great experience for what we're doing is picture on screen, Jeff. It's what you sell for a living. And that's what I tried to bring up last year, and people can't forget. And I think it becomes so much more apparent if people didn't learn in the pandemic, if we don't have content and we don't have product to sell on screen, I don't care what we're selling to them to eat and consume. They're not buying it. They're not coming to us. We're movie theaters. We need content on screen. So if we can win on that experience, look at everybody on this panel has moved away. I don't know anybody who's selling exclusively in-person ticketing. Everybody wants to sell their tickets in advance. We still have good customer service because you have somebody interact. Welcome to the building. But the customer service breakdown happens is if we can't put a good picture on the screen and that customer's interrupted, no matter what they do, if we ruin that experience, we got a problem. So I don't want people to walk away going, well, all this stuff takes away from customer service. It doesn't. It enhances it. It allows you to adapt your business model to still deliver great customer service, but eliminate pinch points. And I saw someone had asked in the chat, well, what about second and third orders? Listen, we studied this at Marcus Theaters and we did our first dine in every Movie Tavern thereafter. Within 30 minutes of the showtime, we have captured 96% of all orders. We broke it down by every single show. So when people get, oh, you're missing out on dessert, it's a bunch of BS, guys. The numbers will prove themselves out if you study it and look at the showtime, look at your order times when they go in whatever system, in our case, Aloha, watch when they hit the kitchen, watch when they hit the bars. It doesn't work. We're not some long dining experience serving a 7-course meal. It's picture on screen. So because of that, people
100% agree with you. It's second drink before the lights go down.
Correct.
Simple.
Because there's no breaks. We're not a stadium. As I said to people before, people aren't getting up in the middle of the movie because the number one selling drink for Marcus Theaters and Movie Tavern is a Long Island iced tea because it has the highest concentration of alcohol with the lowest concentration of liquid. People can get their needed effect with the least amount of risk to have to go to the bathroom. It's a movie theater, not a sporting event.
Hey, Rob, you said there's something we experimented with over the last, I guess, month or so, last 6 weeks. I started putting intermission back in, breaking the picture up about 45, 50 minutes into it and taking a 10-minute break and doing an intermission. And the customers have absolutely loved it. And my after intermission sales have gone up tremendously because of that.
Okay, Sandy, you were about to say something.
I mean, I think it's also the level, right? We talked early on, we talked about going to a McDonald's and then going to the second, a more precise QSR and then going to fine dining, so I think it's also the level. Like if I pick right now, turned around and got rid of all labor and didn't have somebody, that was accepting the guests and taking them to their seat, like they expect that when they come into ours. We've reduced labor in other ways, But to Russell's point, we have to maintain the guest experience. Our guests expect that from us. That's the number one thing for us. So we are serving high-end food and we are doing all that. So, I think it's the level of how much do you reduce on that person-to-person contact. For us, they're going to expect some level there. We can't get rid of it completely, and we don't want to.
Right. And that goes back to, again, your individual models based on the demographics of where you want to build your theater. Customer service, giving the customer what they want and what they enjoy so they have a good experience in your facility. And that will vary depending on your customer and your audience. If you're in a college town, all they care about is watching a movie, having a beer. If you're in Buckhead, they want a more fine dining experience. So again, the demographics of the area determine your levels of customer experience for each of you. Siobhan, you've been sitting quiet. Do you have a thought on everything you've heard right now?
Yeah, as it relates to just standard demographics, I think, and as we talk about guest experience and customer service, I think for so long, the attitude was a little bit like people will, you're in a closed environment. Once they walk in the door, you can't carry things in from the outside. So they'll kind of take what's available. And I think what we're learning is that's not always the case, right? There's a lot of white space out there, and people will maybe not order if there's not something that doesn't, tickle their fancy. So like in my world, from a beverage standpoint, everybody loves to go and have a Pepsi or a Coke and a large popcorn when they're at the movies. But now, as people are becoming more health conscious, as people want other options, we're asking folks to bring on more of kind of the non-carb. And I think when you talk about demographics as it relates to different parts of the country, I think that's another lens we have to look at it through. And then I think there is, and I think that's where we're hitting it a little bit on this customer service standpoint. I am a consumer now, and I think and this is a personal note, but like I think COVID has done this to me, where I don't want anyone to talk to me, and maybe I've become like, I pulled away from a Target curbside order yesterday and said like, I hope I never have to go in again. I hope I just have to flash my phone with my 4-digit code and pop my trunk and give a wave and keep going. So I'm of the consumer mindset that like, the in-app piece is huge because, you don't want to necessarily have that interaction. So it's almost like we've created, when we're coming out of COVID and when we're coming out of like all of these concessions we've made to adapt for it, there's almost like a new demographic that's been created of people who just want to come and have the experience without, like, I don't want to say without customer service because that sounds bad, but like they want to walk in, kind of like do not pass go, do not collect $200, right? But, I think to Russell and Craig's point, like you lose a little bit of like that upsell or that warm, fuzzy guest feeling. So how do we bring that in other ways? And again, from my perspective, we're always just trying to make sure, we are a lot of times an impulse buy, right? So if people like, I'm my own worst nightmare for my brands because I always grab a Diet Pepsi when I'm in the checkout at Target. I never ever order it in the app when I'm picking it up in my car. So how are we reminding people to, and I'd be interested to people's perspective on that. Like, are the tickets lower on in-app than if people are there and experiencing it? And how do we start to filter that in the other direction? Because again, from my perspective, like obviously, Rob's point, picture on screen, it doesn't matter what you're selling. Totally agree. However, it's really important to me that people are still selling a lot of all the things I sell to you. So we want to make sure that we're not kind of cut out of that equation either.
Okay. So the key is the picture on screen, because as Rob said, and everybody agrees, we are a theater first. Everything else is addition to help us drive revenue, bottom line, whether it's food, whether it's entertainment, whether it's you want to order separately or you want a person to order from, whether you go to somewhere where you're paying $5 a night versus $30 a ticket. You know, it's all about individualism and providing the experience for that individual. So you guys are awesome. And by the way, Russell in Alabama, you've accidentally now joined the panel, whether you like it or not, you're part of it. So what I want to do is the overall question was, how do we thrive and survive and thrive in post-COVID? Demographics was one part. The other direction, the other question I want to ask, and again, the panel, and if anybody from the audience has thoughts or opinions, please raise your hand or ask us, and we'll get you on screen as well. Oh, and one more commercial thing. We're giving away a TV, an NEC display TV, to one lucky winner at the end of this panel. So everybody stay tuned. Don't go away because you have to be present to win. All right, here's the question. Got the wrong glasses on. With the studios moving in different directions, the need to find alternative content is greater than before. What are your thoughts on selling the house as a theater to a sponsor who can promote alternative content targeted to that sponsor, or allowing you to have a house separate from studios when they're booking films that you can book alternative content? Now, that was talked about throughout the day, but not in this manner, I think. So let's start with Rob on this one. What do you think about renting, having the Pepsi IMAX?
Well, we want to open that contract back up, Siobhan? I mean, I don't. Listen,
here we go.
No, we've actually, you know, years ago, we went down the road of having some sponsored auditoriums. 12 years ago now. We haven't necessarily dabbled in that now, but we are thirsty for anything in terms of content. And we've talked on the edges about stuff like you're doing. It might not be with Pepsi because we're a contracted customer. I think, you know, we've kind of extended what our relationship is with regard to sponsorship right now. I mean, if it's something that Pepsi wanted to explore, that, you know, we're open to listen, but we need content. I mean, again, like I said, if this proved anything to the entire world, is we are a business that is so dependent on someone else's product, and we will do anything to ensure that we can get content that puts butts in seats, because putting a butt in a seat is something I can sell to. And we've done a tremendous job, our teams in the field, the last 2 to 3 months here. We've made a major push on private cinema, which is a different version of kind of the sponsored thing, what you're saying, where people can buy and rent our places, and they're renting it to show first run movies or catalog product, whatever it may be, to have that. And I think it's an early portion of what you're saying having whatever company, XYZ company rents that, they provide content, and that content is enough to draw consumers in. We'll do whatever we can, because we can't sell to empty seats at the end of the day. And we can't rest on our laurels who's gonna provide that content. We're constantly scouring and changing. And, you know, like I said, we've learned, and everybody on this call has cursed out probably every studio that there is, but you got to do whatever you can to get content, because that's the only way we survive as an industry, is to put something on that screen that makes people want to come, and want to come multiple times, and change that rate of frequency. So if somebody were to come to us, whoever that is, let's say YouTube, I'll pick on YouTube. If YouTube rented a screen and YouTube said, we're going to play this, and YouTube had content that was relevant to the consumer, because that's the problem. A lot of people have content, but not all of it's relevant to the consumer. You know, we've dabbled in showing esports, and certain things work. And this goes back to your demo question. Some markets like anime, and we play anime. Well, anime doesn't play in every market that we have. And certain things, we've seen this, certain things work in dine-in houses that don't necessarily work in, you know, our more traditional houses, even though there's an element of dine-in to those, and vice versa. So it's a unique thing, but we will take we're open-minded. I think everybody in the industry is open-minded to do whatever we can to ensure butts in seats.
Okay. Siobhan, I know you have some, so I'm going to hold your comment for a few minutes, because I know where you're going to go, and I like it. And I think it'll stir some good controversy.
I just don't want Rob getting any ideas between now and then.
and remember, this could be the Lexus Theater. It could be your local.
Yeah, call them.
Right. It could be maybe Netflix. maybe you rent a theater to Netflix and show Netflix content. It could be anything. Sandy, let's go to you as a theater.
So we do show Netflix content. We have been for years, and it's been our saving grace through the pandemic. We've also shown, other entertainment. We do lease. We hire event sales managers. Some are regionalized due to location, and some are per site. We depend on that event sales. So, and we've used it for things as gaming. We've used it to launch somebody's TV show that's, going to air on TLC. We've launched it, we explore all of that. We're now exploring, the digital content of live streaming music, because all the live events in Austin are coming up, and I don't know, the thought is, I don't know if we're going to do it, but the thought is, that's a huge event where everybody goes together, but everybody goes together and attends this event, but you're still going with your group. So if you could still watch the event and watch the event with your group in an iPic movie theater, that's a great party, and it's not a huge occupancy. So, we're exploring that stuff, but, we're also exploring film festivals right now. We're working, I don't know if it'll happen, but, we're exploring with Black Film Festival. It's a 2-week event. Right now you just got to pivot. You're not making money anyway, so people aren't coming in. So if you can bring people through the door and try to get some F&B, you've got to try it. And so, event sales for us and selling our auditorium has always been part of our plan. I mean, it's always been what we've done. And it's a big driver for us on our revenue.
Okay. And that could be everything you just mentioned. I'm sure we're going to get questions on how is the best path to make that happen. And that'll have to be at another, we'll figure out how to respond to that. Matthew, can you give us your thoughts on this question?
Sure. Well, let's start by doing some math, right? An auditorium, if you assume that it's worth about $1 million a year, for us, we're 8 or 9 seat, 9 screen venues, right? So for us, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a branded auditorium where that brand is controlling content. However, if I was a 14 screen exhibitor, I would do that in a heartbeat and say, guess what? We're now a 13 screen venue, and screen number 14 is going exclusively for private content. It's going to be not available for Hollywood unless we say it's going to be available. I don't know if you can get away with that, but you get my point. And but that's where the math comes into play, right? If that screen is worth $1 million a year, then whatever, you pick a brand, Tito's Vodka, right, is going to need to underwrite their sponsorship on that screen for, half of that revenue in order for us to be able to take that screen and make it and do the kind of events that we want to do. Because the problem with making a screen a private screen, right, and not just for private events, but a branded screen that comes outside of first run Hollywood content, is that you need to be able to get the dollars to work, right, monetizing it. And if you're giving up your core business in order to be able to do that, then the dollars need to be worth it. I don't know that it is in smaller venues. I imagine in some of the larger venues where you're overscreened to begin with and you no longer need a 20-plex, I imagine it makes a whole lot of sense if you can get the math right.
So if I hear what you're saying, for a theater that has 8 screens, alternative content is something you need to do, but you can't dedicate an actual theater, but you run it throughout your whole theater.
We do a ton of it now, right, as is,
right.
So, which is great and has worked really well. But if you're talking about taking an auditorium and branding it to someone else, then you're doing something outside of the first run content realm. Now that happens all the time, but it's on a rotating basis. It's not our large auditorium screen 9 is no longer a movie screen. It could be an esports venue or this or that. It requires dollars because A movie you could show 4 times a day, 365 days a year. Whatever that content is going to be, if you can't get that level of density of volume on that screen, then the sponsorship dollars need to be significant enough to underwrite the lost revenue.
Okay. Russell, random audience person we've pulled in. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm never short on thoughts, am I? There's a couple things with this that I can talk about, and I think Matthew hits it right. So in a 3-plex in Cherokee, Iowa, some of this stuff doesn't make sense, but in a 15-plex in Waukee, Iowa, where we have those additional 15 screens, and particularly right now, we're looking to fill some of this stuff. I can tell you we're already in some of those conversations, not necessarily about having somebody that just has exclusive rights to that. Although, as we begin talking about this, there's a community choice credit union here in town that's already talking to us about having constant events there. How awesome would that be to be in one of these small dine and recline auditoriums? And Matthew, it doesn't necessarily just have to be their content. It can be Hollywood content. It just happens to be exclusively for community choice credit union guests, and they're giving that stuff away. Sure. Or they're the ones that are, and ultimately, they don't have to be spending all the money. Maybe they're sponsoring it, but they're driving guests to us, and those guests are still spending those F&B dollars. So I love that idea, especially, during this time, and maybe it's a 3 or 6 month commitment, and we have to see how it goes. Jeff, you'd brought up the Pepsi IMAX. Well, that's something that's really kind of interesting. Obviously, we already have our relationship with Pepsi. Or maybe we actually were talking for a little while to one of the large C-stores in this area. C-stores are highly competitive for some reason in Iowa. I don't know if they are everywhere else, but we had talked about, you equip us with our laser NEC and our XLD auditorium when we're doing those tours earlier. But how cool would it be if we could sell the rights to our XLD? It would be the Casey's General Store, the Casey's XLD. They do that all the time, whether it's baseball fields or arenas, or if I could sell the Casey's IMAX experience, because I've talked to IMAX. IMAX has that within our contract that we could actually have a sponsor to that. So I think one of the things we're talking about here is, okay, how can we continue to evolve and continue to have other revenue streams that we maybe wouldn't have done in the past? And I think some of these things are a way that we can go.
Okay, wonderful. Alabama, since you're also an audience participator that's been dragged into this, do you have a quick thought on that one?
Well, like Matthew said, and Russell too, it all depends on the number of screens you got. I'm a 3-screen in Mobile, Alabama. I can't afford to do it. I've got to keep that screen available to where I can make the most money from, and that's from first run Hollywood movies. If I was sitting in, like you said, a 20-plex, and I would try to negotiate something like that with one of those type vendors. But it's also got to be a synergy where Russell's talking about branding with a local company or something like that. That may work on the short term, but I don't think that's going to be a long-term thing you could do. Now, Netflix, Amazon, somebody like that, where they want to be able to take their product and say, hey, you don't have to sit at home and watch it anymore. You can now go to XYZ theater in this town and see it on the big screen. Now they are increasing their viewership, in turn helping you increase your viewership. So I think there's some synergy there that could work if we could ever get them to agree to it. The biggest problem we got is the MLAs that we have with the current studios that'll ever let us get beyond or to that point. That's right. The battle right there.
Okay, now before we get the hook, Siobhan had some really good perspective on this when we spoke earlier. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we joked about it, but working for a company that, I think historically in front of everybody's mind is, Pepsi plasters their name on a lot of things. I think coming out of COVID, and I'll pick on stadiums again, there's a lot of stadiums that had very large Pepsi logos in them this past year that we didn't realize the value out of because nobody was there, right? So there's definitely a different lens with how we look on this, and why we love the theater industry so much is we want our brands to be somewhere where people are having fun. There is really, like, for our brands, the best moment is when you're having a good time and you're drinking my product or eating our product and you're then seeing an advertisement on screen for it, that's like, the marketing and branding pinnacle for us. So I think a lot of people look at organizations like ours and they think, these folks can help us. We don't have content. And I think, to what everybody said earlier, Rob's point just about getting butts in seats, like I'm dependent on that too, because that's where we want our brands to play. And, Sandy, you mentioned like trying all this alternative content. We're also trying to figure out how to support people with, this alternative content. People have mentioned esports. We have esports platforms through our Mountain Dew brands and how we can help tie in on that. Because again, at the end of the day for us, we're dependent on the content too. And we just want our brands and our products to play in a place where people are having a really good time. And that's kind of the perfect storm for us, I would say. And I can't speak for other organizations, but for us, it's less about just like plastering up a logo and like sponsoring something. And it's more about, and it's like all the like YouTube and Instagram influencers these days, but there is truth to that. We want people to be interacting with our brands in a positive and super fun way.
Okay, wonderful. Matt and John, I assume you're on because we're out of time.
We're getting close. We're just giving you a few minute warning. You got, if you have another question, Jeff, that you want to hit, I mean, we're literally 5 minutes, about 4 minutes over, but we were well over before you started. So we haven't even burned your time yet. So if you have another question, go for it.
Okay.
So
So
if you don't, we'll find something to do.
okay. So first of all, everybody here has made very valid points. I do have another question, but I'm kind of thinking, since this is a live free flow thing, Sandy mentioned a bunch of really good things, and actually you all have, Matthew, Rob, and Alabama, and Siobhan. The alternative content, it's critical. What Rob mentioned earlier is content drives this business. We all know that. The studios are doing what the studios do. They're trying to look after themselves right now. Even if they do release what they're supposed to release in March and December, there's still nothing behind it until another 12 to 18 months when they can make more product. So we have to find a way to bring content in. Sandy, you already mentioned you work with Netflix. So how do you go about deciding which content do you do live? Do you do live acts, music? Do you do small upstart directors? How do you determine the content? And I want to start with Sandy, and then we'll go to Matthew and Rob, and then Alabama, since you're here.
Well, that's not my area, so I'm not going to make that's Clark. All Clark. Clark Woods is our buyer. He negotiates these contracts. He's been in the business for years, and he negotiated this deal with Netflix years ago. So we don't show every Netflix movie. It's the big ones that are coming out, and then we show them, and they sell. They sell. So what that tells us is that even though you can still see it in your living room, people still want to go to the movies. It's everybody's saying that streaming is going to kill the industry. It's a bunch of crap. I mean, we all have kitchens in our house, but we still go to dinner. It's the experience. That's why for us, the experience has to be there, because people can watch TV in their living room. So if we're not going to provide them, this fantastic night out on the town, they're not going to come. Unless they really want to see that particular movie on a big screen. People come to watch Netflix at our booth because of the experience. It's really not for anything else, because they could go down the street for $5 and at an AMC and go watch the same film. But they don't. They come to us, when it's these movies. So we've had to adjust to some of our models. It's no secret. We all went through our bankruptcy prior to the pandemic, and we came out of it. And we made some really critical changes that are helping, but there's still the core of our business that did work, that we need to keep going with. I'm more interested in finding out about Craig and his intermission and those sales that went up after intermission, because I want to know about that.
So customer experience and an experienced economy that we live in.
Yeah.
Matthew, your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to give you any thoughts on alternative content because I think we do a crappy job of it to begin with. But here's what I'll tell you. That when we turn around and we make it experiential, it wins, right? We started something called a Fan Fest event that has a giveaway associated with it once a month. It's a title, it's dress up, it's themed, the menu's themed. It's the Fan Fest as opposed to just us showing Grease on Saturday night. And those seem to work exceptionally well. And they work well. Why? Because there's an experience component to them. Now the other side of me, right, the operator in me says I hate the idea of intermissions, but that's what makes a market, right? This is the idea. This is what makes the world go round. I want to be the guy that burns and turns. That's always been what I've wanted to be, right? I want another showtime that's more advantageous that I can get in before 10 o'clock at night, and that intermission 4 times a day or 3 times before that screwed me and put that showtime at 10:10, and I'm convinced I'm not going to sell enough tickets. So that's a whole separate discussion, but that's my take on it. And again, that's multiple opinions is what makes a market. So as far as alternative content goes, just to finish that whole cycle, we too do all of that, right? We've worked with Netflix, we've done, this, that, and the other thing. It's fine. At the end of the day, experience wins. And in my viewpoint, the traditional exhibitors are going to have a rougher go at it than the dining exhibitors, okay? Because you can simulate popcorn and soda. No offense, Pepsi, I'm a customer. You can simulate that in your home quite easily along with your big screen. You can't simulate 3 courses and a table and all these other wonderful accoutrement that the cinema dining folks provide. And that's, at the end of the day, the difference. And I see cinema dining emerging out of this way stronger than traditional exhibition.
Absolutely. So again, customer service and customer experience. Rob, your thoughts?
Alternative content's a tough thing, Jeff, because as I kind of said before, it's driven by market. You talk about market and demos, and let's go to Matt's first point. When you talk about these, we have buildings, we have 6 plexes in Movie Tavern all the way to 21 plexes in Marcus Theaters and everything in between. You brought up a great point when you even talked about sponsorship. There's a sweet spot. It's probably 13 to 16 screens, which is perfect, where you could say, hey, I dedicate this to alternative content or somebody else. We've noticed a Movie Tavern, we have to be very judicious in where we put it, because if you're giving up a first run screen, that better be really good alternative content. And then you need to know your demos, because certain places, you might have an alternative content kids series in the morning. There's riff tracks, some of these more popular things that play. It doesn't play every market. Christian movies, we get into playing some of these, I don't want to say Kirk Cameron movies, but he's had his success of those type movies. Those don't play everywhere. They don't always play in dine-in theaters either. So it's a very tough thing. And, people say sports, and listen, I'm the biggest sports guy. But some of the struggles we have, we put beautiful bars in places, but the struggle you have is you got to tell all your buddies, we're getting together at the movie theater. And that's the one barrier, when you talk about sports as an alternative content, I don't know if they're willing to make that leap. Now, if we do some of the stuff that Chad showed early on and make it very stadium-esque and stuff, and we've done that. We have bars that have focused on big screens and tons of TVs and lectured these guys about, I better not see the Food Network or any other channel, but, your Fox Sports, or ESPN or whatnot, to make that legitimacy factor with the consumer as you show that as an alternative content. Maybe if we could show it in the auditoriums, but you get into licensing agreements that go way up the food chain, that you get served cease and desist letters by people that are way too high up, that, when stuff gets signed by Roger Goodell's office, you don't want to deal with that. So, and they will find you. I mean, I know I'm not telling people how to operate there. You get to a certain level or size, they will find you, and they will, even though you're like, I only did it once, they don't care. I think that would be an interesting alternative if we could ever come to a right sharing agreement with networks to get sports. I think it's because it's a one-time event type thing. You know, we built the bars and tried to get people to come in the bars. Again, I'm getting in the car, going to the movie theater to meet my buddies. But if you said, hey, it's in an auditorium on a giant screen on a laser projector, and, you know, it's for, you know, people get it. I'm a TV geek. I mean, I look for every 4K sporting event I can see on my TV. That's why I have a 4K TV. And that's the one thing we win at, guys, is technology. This business has always won. The only times this business has won is when we've spent upgrades in the auditoriums. Slope floor to stadium seating was a revolution. And once we all went to stadium seating, it normalized. Same thing with, you know, recliners. That was a revolution. Then once everybody did it, it's no longer a big deal. We're looking for that next thing, but it happens in the auditorium. And I mean, I agree with Matthew. That's why we were so much into food and beverage at Marcus Theaters. I know so many other people got into, because it is important. But at the end of the day, the one thing I'd warn people before we go too much to say, hey, that it's all dine-in guys going to win because we have exclusive dine-ins. Just remember, dine-in was a small piece of the big puzzle. The big puzzle's all movie going. Not everybody was a dine-in customer. Everybody's a movie goer who goes to watch a movie. So we got to make sure we don't forget about that, because that big puzzle maybe shrunk a little bit in the past 2 years here. So I'm not saying it's going to go one way or the other. I think we need to have as much food and beverage, and we need to have great customer service to keep people, and we need to be an alternative difference to the at-home viewing experience. Because if not, somebody's gonna be like, I can watch that movie on HBO Go, or I can watch HBO Max. I should say, that was the old thing with HBO Go. I can watch it on HBO Max, or I can watch it in the theater. So we have to make sure we provide people all those things.
Right. What I like, Rob, is you tied in this question with the very first question we talked about, the importance of demographics, the importance of bringing your product and your venue to the right audience. So where you mentioned alternative content is absolutely demographics driven. You're not going to set, I mean, there's a large dine-in circuit here in Dallas that is advertising rent the auditorium to see the big game. And I'll be curious to see how that goes. You know, for $300, you can rent the entire auditorium and bring your own friends, your own family, to see if that stirs up, as you said, the important people to send nasty notes.
Oh, it will.
Yeah,
they do.
They
do.
will. There's no doubt.
Alabama, real quick.
Wait, Jeff, we got two questions that came in on the chat. Just real quick. One on this, then we'll wrap this up. One of them's to Bama, which is perfect. Before I do the Bama one, real quick, Rob, can you comment on a question that came in from one of the cinema owners, Scott Castle from Roadhouse? Because you have a perspective across all the different sites that you have, right? Dine-in, non-dine-in. When you see a film coming out that's also going live to date on HBO Max, are you able to adjust your ticket prices and charge less for that to make it more interesting for them to come to your theater instead of watching it at home, or not?
We haven't dabbled in that. You know, we keep our discount day. We have a discount day, a $5 day that's across dine-in theaters and across regular theaters, but everybody out there has MLAs that have APPs built into them. So, right. You know, I know AMC thumped their chest that they were going to undersell HBO Max movies at $3, but they didn't do it. So
we did anything that played day and date when we were open. We dropped the ticket price to $5 and said, you guys can.
Oh, right. But you did it
on discount day. We did it all the time. Opening night, $5 prime time if they were showing it day and date. That's a bunch of bull crap that I'd like to see them try and enforce that.
I'm not disagreeing. I just would advise folks, you know, they do audits and they go back and they have short memories, and these MLAs are pretty, I mean, people can treat them as they will. That's all I'll say with MLAs.
One of the 800-pound gorillas needs to give that a try and fight it down for the rest of us. How about Marcus gives the guinea pig? I wouldn't mind.
All I'll say, Matthew, is everybody has MLAs, and we've all had to deal with different items from them over time. Yeah. And I'm not saying that the studios are very big, and they tend to do okay on them.
Ding, ding, ding. Okay, go to your corners.
Yeah, and Bama, one came in from one of your earlier comments about your intermission thing. I know it's something new that you started, but are you doing it on every show, just certain shows right
No,
now?
only on the main dinner show each night from the shows that start from 6 to 7. That's the only show we do it on. The other shows, people can care less. They really like it during that dinner show.
All right, interesting.
So,
And you're doing,
so I'm only giving up 10 minutes. It takes about 15 total out of the thing. That's all I'm giving up on my schedule is that one showing for about 15 minutes. So it pushes my late show back a little bit.
So in the big dinners, they eat and drink more, and it allows them to take a break and then come back.
Yeah.
Without missing.
And they'll come back and eat and drink more after they come back.
so Craig will be, if you hang on for our happy hour call, right, which we're going to do at the end of the day, and Craig's still on with his periodic table behind him, we will make Craig tell everybody what kind of numbers he's seeing from that second intermission. Well, if he doesn't know, he'll make them up real quick in the next 30 minutes. And that'll be entertaining. So come with some numbers, Craig. Rob always likes your numbers, don't you, Rob? You like
I have good numbers, baby.
All I was going to say on the intermission real quick, man, we ran double features outdoors this summer. And what I'll say was a paradigm shift is we had some folks that were like, intermission at drive-ins, the hottest thing is the in-between period. Disappointing, and this is the one thing that came back to us. All of our sales still tended to be at traditional time. That intermission was not what it was 40 years ago for some of the guys in our company. And we talked about so when you're doing a double feature, your first one starts at whatever, sundown, 9 o'clock, next one starts at 11. We did a pittance to sales at those periods.
Yeah, but at a drive-in, you got your cooler in the car.
Well, right, but we didn't sell anything. I mean, it was very poor. So I would say that was one thing that changed for us. I'm not disputing what Alabama's saying about his intermission. If it's at the right time, No,
they don't buy during the intermission. They buy when they come back to their seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't buy anything. The intermission, they go to the bathroom, they catch up on their phones, they check in, do everything else they want to do. And then once the movie starts back, then they start ordering.
But again, this goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, demographics. What works for, one area definitely won't work for another. And Rob and Matthew, I absolutely, it's wonderful. This is exactly why you're both on the panel, because one is a large 1,000 screen auditorium and the other is a 150, 120 screen cinema circuit. So you each have different ways of doing business, and they're right for you based on the demographics that you serve. Same thing with you, Alabama. It's the same thing. And with Sandy and with Russell. Siobhan, you're a whole different perspective on this.
Yeah, this was great. So I'm going to say real quick that Allison from Fridley, she won a truckload of Wicked Whoopie Pies are going to be shipped to Iowa. So we got a truckload of diabetes headed toward Allison. You might want to warn her, Russell.
Well, she's on the panel next.
She's on her. Oh yeah, we'll let her know when she's on the panel next.
She knows now.
So she's a winner. Thanks for that. And Jeff, be real quick, or wrap this up and give away your Monster TV.
Well, we're actually wrapped up, and Amy had texted me, said she just recently did the poll of who was online, and she did. She randomly pulled out a winner, and that would be Matt. Do you know who that winner is?
Who's the winner? Shelly Schnell from St. Michael's Cinema up in Minnesota.
Okay, so Shelly, you're listening because you have to be listening, otherwise you wouldn't have won.
Great. She's on.
We will connect with you, and we will ship the TV to you. We'll get it to your front door. But I want to thank everybody on this panel. I want to thank the last minute additions to the panel. I really appreciate your time. I know you're all doing a million other things. Your opinions were so wonderfully set out. And is there anybody, just to wrap it up, a last minute comment? I'll go in order real quick. Matthew.
I actually have a last minute comment about one of your panelists.
Okay.
Russell, get it straight.
Oh. No, I'm not going to talk about Russell. And no, I'm not going to talk about Rob either, or even iPick, where I started this. I'm going to talk about Siobhan, actually. Listen, I was in the restaurant business for a very long time prior to getting in the cinema business years ago now, I guess, something like that. Yeah. And one of the things when I first arrived that you couldn't find in a movie theater was a Pepsi.
Yeah.
And you still can't find one on an airplane if I'm correct. Oh, you fixed that? Okay, well, I'll let you go in a second. Anyhow, now we're with Pepsi, and you guys have been an absolutely outstanding partner. I don't regret not going with Coca-Cola one bit. They just changed who we work with, but I'm sure you know Reagan pretty well, especially since she's in the casino business
Yep.
end of it. So I just wanted to say for any exhibitors out there, because Coke has always been such a large portion of the theater business. If they're considering switching, what you said and that message associated with the Pepsi logo being associated with good times and good things is where you want to be. And that's why, obviously, natural transition to the movie business. You guys have been great partners, and I highly recommend. So just wanted to get that out there.
I want to give a shameless plug before we
Thank
get
you.
off. Our customers routinely tell us how beautiful our screen, our picture is. And I want to give out to Jeff and them, because Jeff convinced us to take the 4K laser projectors 3 years ago, and they have been absolutely fantastic. NEC makes a great product. If you're not using them, you need to consider them.
Wait, my audio wasn't working. Can you say that again? All right. Thank you.
Just come and see my screen. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Siobhan, would you like to respond, make a comment, closing?
No, just, thank you, Matthew, for that kind, call out and comment. We want to be with our partners. We want to have a good time. We want our brands to play there. I was thrilled to be included today. I certainly learned a ton from the session. And I look forward to being with you live next year, especially for happy hour. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Rob, quick closing remark.
Just thank you, Jeff, for putting this together. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the panel. I think it was great. And I just give everybody the best of luck and the best wishes, because I think we still got a long road to hoe here before we get back to normality and we start getting releases. But as long as people can make it to the fall, I think we'll be in much better shape.
Awesome. Russell, last quick 30-second comment.
I have nothing. I just want Matt Motter to say, and we're back when he comes back. He looks like he's got his green screen behind there. It's awesome. You guys are rocking. Kick it. Thanks.
All right. Well, we hope we lived up to last year's panel, and we hope everybody enjoyed and learned something from everything we did for the last hour plus.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.